शुक्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। ॐ सिन्दूरारुणविग्रहां त्रिनयनां माणिक्यमौलिस्फुरत्तारानायकशेखरां स्मितमुखीमापीनवक्षोरुहां पाणिभ्यां मलिपूर्णरत्नचषकं रक्तोत्पलं बिभ्रतीं सौम्यां रत्नघटस्थरक्तचरणां ध्यायेतु पराम् अम्बिकाम्। ध्यायेन्नित्यं महेशं रजतगिरिनिभं चारुचन्द्रावतंसं रत्नाकल्पोज्ज्वलाङ्गं परशुमृगवराभीतिहस्तं प्रसन्नं पद्मासीनं समन्तात् स्तुतममरगणैः व्याघ्रकृतिं वसानं विश्वाद्यं विश्वबीजं निखिलभयहरं पञ्चवक्त्रं त्रिनेत्रम्। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। गुरवे सर्वलोकानां विषजे भवरोगिणां निधये सर्वविद्यानां श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्ससुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्।
धृतराष्ट्र उवाच धर्मक्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे समवेतायुयुत्सवः मामकाः पाण्डवाश्चैव किमकुर्वत सञ्जय। श्रीभगवानुवाच क्लैब्यं मास्मगमः पार्थ नैतत्त्वय्युपपद्यते क्षुद्रं हृदय दौर्बल्यं त्यक्त्वोत्तिष्ठ परन्तप। यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानमधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम्। परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृताम् धर्म संस्थापनार्थाय संभवामि युगे युगे। वीतराग भयक्रोधा मन्मया माम् उपाश्रिताः बहवो ज्ञानतपसा पूता मद्भावमागताः। कर्मणि अकर्म यः पश्येत् अकर्मणि च कर्म यः सबुद्धिमान् मनुष्येषु सयुक्तः कृत्स्नकर्मकृत् ब्रह्मार्पणं ब्रह्महविः ब्रह्माग्नौ ब्रह्मणाहुतं ब्रह्मैव तेन गन्तव्यं ब्रह्मकर्म समाधिना श्रेयान् द्रव्यमयात् यज्ञात् ज्ञानयज्ञः परन्तप सर्वं कर्म अखिलं पार्थ ज्ञाने परिसमाप्यते तद्विद्धि प्रणिपातेन परिप्रश्नेन सेवया उपदेक्ष्यन्ति ते ज्ञानं ज्ञानिनः तत्त्वदर्शिनः यज्ञात्वा न पुनर्मोहम् एवं यास्यसि पाण्डव येन भूतान्यशेषेण द्रक्ष्यसि आत्मनि अथो मयि तस्मात् अज्ञानसम्भूतं हृत्स्नं ज्ञानासिनात्मनः छित्त्वैनं संशयं योगम् आतिष्ठोत्तिष्ठ भारत न कर्तृत्वं न कर्माणि लोकस्य सृजति प्रभुः न कर्मफलसंयोगं स्वभावस्तु प्रवर्तते नादत्ते कस्यचित् पापं न चैवं सुकृतं विभुः अज्ञानेनावृतं ज्ञानं तेन मुह्यन्ति जन्तवः ये हि संस्पर्शजा भोगा दुःखयोनय एव ते आद्यन्तवन्तः कौन्तेय न तेषु रमते बुधः.
Thank you, Rakesh. Very nice. Namaste, everyone. Thank you very much for accommodating change of time today. We were governed by the flow rate of the Des Moines River. So we had gone on a canoeing trip with my daughter because it's her last weekend. And we had done this 10 years ago. So we thought we should do it one more time. And they give a time that you can get started at the top, but the arrival time depends on the flow rate of the river. So they said anywhere between 4 to 6 p.m. you'll get done. And we made it actually just around 5, but it was convenient that we could start a little later so that I could take shower and do evening puja. Thank you. We'll be back to regular schedule. I was reluctant to change it, but there was, we thought once. Okay, where are we today? Chapter 7. I believe we finished 17, huh? Or for 18 because I think
20. We finished 20.
20 also. Oh,
Yeah,
oh
we
right,
have
right. Yes,
mentioned
yes. Tam, I remember that. Krita, yeah. Krita Jnanaha. Yes, deprived of knowledge. So how about the review of these? As I said, the very central verse in this is, from my viewpoint, is 16. And the classification going from Arti, Artharthi, Jnanarthi, Jnani represents a shift in the guna balance. The Jnani's thinking is, of course, gunatita, beyond that of the gunas, but the other three reflect the change in the guna balance towards a more sattvic guna. And Bhagavan himself says, of all of them, the Jnani, Nitya Yukta, ever integrated and exclusively devoted, Eka Bhakti Vishishyate. I am exceedingly dear to the knower and he is dear. Now, here in this context, it's worthwhile to talk a little bit about the nature of bhakti itself. And there are, I should tell our group here that we are preparing some videos that go with the YouTube channel, which is to just make some hopefully useful and attractive communications to people at large, so that they may engage in study like Bhagavad Gita, Sanjyavandanam, and other things. And one of the topics on which recently we have prepared and should be out shortly is on Bhakti Yoga, and particularly the Vishnu Sahasranama, which is very popular stotram, particularly among South Indians, but of course universally popular among all Hindus. Um, and it's worthwhile mentioning in this context of 17 why Bhagavan says Nitya Yukta and Eka Bhakti. Eka Bhaktihi. This is very important. The point here is that why is this verse appearing in the middle of an adhyaya, which is Jnana Vijnana, right? Isn't that the title of the adhyaya? Knowledge and realization. Usually, when people approach our spiritual texts, sadhana, we think of four paths in whatever classification you want: karma, bhakti, jnana, raja, yoga, right? These four paths are delineated. And of these, karma is special because it is, in some sense, non-optional, right? Bhagavan has said from the beginning that some sort of karma you have to do. Of course, when we say karma yoga, there specifically we mean the Vedic karmas, which have special property of purifying the mind, right? And preparing it in the other three paths. But typically the beginning aspirant thinks that I like one path, I like Jnana Yoga, I like Raj Yoga, I'm not suited for the other one. This is natural. But at the same time, it is erroneous. Nevertheless, for the beginner, it is good to say, yes, pursue one, the one you like even, with great devotion and fervor. But the point of Vijnana, once that knowledge is attained, once the success on one path has been gained, it automatically clarifies that all the paths are not different at all. Okay, we can think of this as a four-line highway that converges, and eventually there is no distinction in the lanes. If you take a winding path to the mountaintop, as it gets closer and closer to the top, it has to become narrower and narrower, the path, right? Otherwise, you cannot reach the pinnacle. Pinnacle is one point. You cannot have a broad road at the top. It must narrow. And then when you descend, you see only one. One does not see a diversity of paths. The human being, constructed as we all are, as human beings right now, at least, for better or for worse, and we can talk about that, whether it's a curse or a blessing, but we are all endowed with a heart, right? There is an emotive aspect. Although I joke to my daughter that I am actually a Vulcan whose blood is green, like in the Star Trek, but we all have an emotional aspect, right? So sometimes she doubts that I have emotional aspect, but we all have emotional aspect, heart. And we also have a mind, right? And intellect. So different people may have different slightly proportions. One may have very refined intellect and wants to approach everything rationally, consistently. And initially that person may think, yes, I like Jnana Yoga. I like this philosophy, very, very pure, and none of this ritual and all that. This is for the lower types. I like that very clear philosophy. I'm a very high-minded person. I like sitting in an armchair and read Vedanta Upanishads. This can be one initial thinking. Another person may think I'm very religious. I'm very, very full of devotion. I don't care for all these rituals. Nowadays, actually, most people don't care for rituals. This is a common trope I hear from everyone who, even devout Hindus, they don't like rituals. Right? This ritualistic stuff seems very superstitious. and somehow dumb and ignorant. Whereas, we like, okay, I'm very, very devotional and I will do whatever I like, some sort of stotra, mantra. Yeah. And then there are some who don't have either of these, um, shall we say, constraints. They have been brought up to do rituals. That's all they know. That's all they do. They say, "Bhai, ye hame don't come and tell us all this philosophy. Don't tell us all. This is what we know how to do." Okay. But the truth of the matter is, when you really enjoy the juice of this, of all that our Hinduism has to offer, you realize that all these are part of it. There is nothing greater in the Jnana Yoga path that is not there in the Bhakti Yoga path. Okay, that is why, and in fact, our Jagat Guru, Shankaracharya, Adi Shankaracharya, has already said, what is Bhakti? He says, Swaswarupa Anusandhanam. One's real nature knowing is that interest, that knowledge of one's true nature is Bhakti. Okay, so that's a very beautiful definition, because that clarifies to you that it's no different from Gyan after all. Knowledge, that is what we call Jigyasu, right? Brahma Vidya is the same thing. So here, this is why he says, Nitya Yukta Eka Bhaktir Vishishyate. Now, this Eka Bhakti is very important, because when we start off by doing Bhakti Marg, many people like to say lots of stotrams, right? And luckily, in our Hindu tradition, there is no dearth of stotrams. I think you can spend your whole life learning stotrams and you cannot exhaust the stuti of the Lord, right? I have a book I bought a long time ago, Brihat Stotra Ratnakar. Have you seen that one? Brihat is great. It has possibly every stotram you can think of. And I don't know all of them. Okay. Now, do you think person has to master the Brihat Stotra Ratnakar in order to know God? No. No. This is important point. Okay. So that is the point in this Sri Vishnu Sahasrama. Take Vishnu Sahasrama, 1,000 names. Okay. 1,000 names. Beautiful. It's a glorious poem. The starting setting is so beautiful. The questions are so beautiful. The Yudhishthira, Shantanu, and 1,000, and typically 1,008 names. Right? He says Sahasranam, but Ashta Uttara. Why or how will knowing those 1,000 names lead to knowledge of the one's true self? Okay. And let us take the trajectory of a human being. Let us say I memorized this Vishnu Sahasranamam at the age of 10. Okay. I turned 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, maybe 90. I recite this Sahasranamam every day till I'm 90. But at 90, will I remember the 1,000 names? May not. I'm not kidding. Already at 50, sometimes memory slips. Correct? So then, without the grace of the Guru, right, how will that saram, the juice, the essence of the Vishnu Sahasranamam be known, right? See, the Vishnu Sahasranam essence is already there in the thing itself, although it actually comes in Padma Puranam. But at the end of Vishnu Sahasranam, we always say one thing. It's actually a beautiful piece where Parvati asks Ishvara. I don't know if you know this one. He asks, Keno payena laguna. Okay. Kena upayena laguna. By what upaya? By what mechanism? By what procedure? By what resorting to what technique? Laguna. Shortly, quickly, right? Can the ones, the second, Patyate Pandita Nityam, Stotum Ichamyam, Shrotum Ichamyam Prabhu. The one by which all the Panditas, the learned ones say, Shrotum Icham, I want to hear, oh Prabhu, oh Lord, she's asking Ishvara, right? What does Bhagavan reply? Ishvaro Vacha. Sri Rama Rama Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasra Nama Tattulyam Rama Nama Varanani. What a beautiful. He gives the answer. He says, you may say 1,000 names, but if I put the 1,000 names in a balance and I put a Ram Nam here, the equivalent, Tattulyam, is Ram. Correct? So you see, in bhakti also, there must be a focusing. You cannot be saying 1,000 stotras all your life. Right? First one chants loudly, then one chants mentally, then one reduces into a focal point. So there is a story, I think it's probably in Ramakrishna's or someone's Charitra, or maybe it is a legend in a sense that it's part of our parampara, that there was a great sadhu who never gave any discourses, realized soul. One day they went into his hut after he attained samadhi, mahasamadhi, and they saw there were notebooks and notebooks, and they thought, oh, this is wonderful. This sadhu must have written some great treatises on the way. They opened and everything was just Ram, Ram, Ram. Only one word. So you see, what is this Ram? We must understand. Now, ordinarily, we think Sri Ram, Bhagavan Sri Ram, incarnation of the Lord himself as a human being, participating, whose glorious life story, pursuits, his transactions, as it were, is given in the Ramayana. Right? And Ramayana is part of what we call itihasam. Right? In the canon, we must be careful to realize Shruti, Smriti, Purana, Itihas. Right? Now, one thing important to keep in mind is there would be no Itihas if there was no Shruti. This we must not forget. And that is why Bhagavan Sri Ram engaged in all the Vaidika practices in his life. That's why he's called Maryada Purush. Right? His Upanayam was performed. All the samskaras were performed according to the Vaidika Dharma. Right? We forget that. Without the Vaidika Dharma, there would be no structure to the story of Rama. So Rama is sent to a guru. He goes to a Gurukula, right? And there are many beautiful stories about his life with Rishi Vasishtha. Most excellent. Vasishtha means excellent. Excellent, the most excellent Rishi, whose conduct was impeccable beyond any question or taint. Such an impeccable conduct. So, and in that ashram, actually, our Yoga Vasishtha itself comes from that, the instructions given to Ram by Rishi Vasishtha. Then comes the time when Rishi Vishwamitra himself comes and asks Dasharatha, I want to take your sons to help me perform some great yajnas. Again, look at the fame, the story. He's going to perform a yajna. Yajna is the most central Vedic ritual. Correct? So without Shruti, there is no Itihas. Correct? This be forgotten. Nevertheless, we are talking about bhakti. So this is one understanding. We have the story of this human being. But when in meditation you sit and you understand through yoga, Rama means literally the mind when it is immersed in Brahman. That is Rama. Because that is delight. The name Rama itself is delight. Anandam. Right? So the name, but not only is the experience, correct, of mind immersed in Brahman, Rama, but the name itself, Rama, the very syllables are enjoyable. So if you say Rama, Rama, Rama again and again, the great power of our Devanagari and the Sanskrit language, it will uplift you. It will give a delight. This, of course, Rishi Valmiki realized. Right? Okay. So, Eka Bhakti. Now you see what I'm saying? How did Rishi Valmiki actually compose Ramayana? He sat in single-minded penance, right? saying Ram, Ram, till legend goes, anthill rose over him. Correct? Right? So now, is this different from yoga, Raju? No, not at all. Because he has applied dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Right? What is dharana? Definition is chitta bandha at one point. Tying the mind to one point is dharana. And then dhyanam is tatra ekatanata. One, that continuation of that thought at that one point is dharana. And then samadhi is when finally the distinction is broken between the object of that meditation, the meditator, and the act of meditating. So then only consciousness shines through. This is the same experience that Rishi Valmiki had, which then, because of his great karmas, pure punya soul, outpouring was the Ramayana. That's how we get the story itself, right? So Eka Bhakti is no different from Rajyoga, is no different from Jnana Yoga, right? So that is why Bhagavan is saying here, in the middle of Jnana Vijnana, knowledge and realization, he's talking about Bhakti, right? Right. And so Priyaha, because I am exceedingly dear to the knower, he is very dear to me. Atyartha ahamcha mama priya. So this is the intent. So therefore, in the beginning, while one may focus or feel drawn or attracted to one path, if success is desired on any path, it must finally reach the single point at which all paths converge. And when the fruit of the siddhi of that sadhana is at hand, it will be obvious that there is no difference in the paths, and therefore all those will be enjoyed. That is, the fruits of bhakti are given to the jnani, the few fruits of jnana are given to the bhakt, to the true bhakt, right? The one who has successfully practiced eka bhakti and surrendered to the Lord. This is his, and there he says, Udaraha sarva eve. Definitely, all these four are noble, but the knower, but the jnani is my very self. Atma eva me matam. He is my very self. He is immersed in that place. Asthita sahi yukta atma bhave mameva anuttamam gatim. He has resorted to me alone, the goal without parallel. And at the later we will also talk about this business. The theme I started last time is, do we know what to do at the time of departure from the body, right? This is important, and that goes with the siddhi, or the culmination of all the paths is knowing that. And then of course bahunam janmanamante, end of all many births. Jnanavan mam prapadyati, the man of knowledge directly reaches me. Vasudeva sarvam iti samahatma sudurlabha. Such a magnanimous soul is extremely rare. And we know there are the three gurus from our recent memory who embody this characteristics. So, what is the state of others, indeed, of all of us? Kamaihi taihi taihi kritagnyanaha, deprived of knowledge by variety of cravings, prapadyante anya devataha, they resort to other deities. Tam tam niyamam asthaya prakritya niyataha swaya. They adopt other disciplines, being constrained by their inborn nature. So now Bhagavan is describing what happens to the arti, artharthi, and jnanarthi, so to speak.
Shankar,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. I didn't quite understand the what Bhagavan is trying to say in the 20th verse. So he says the people who are not jnanis are resort to other deities and follow other methods.
Right.
But Ramakrishna Paramhans himself revered Devi as the highest power, right?
Indeed. But the point is this, that Ramakrishna did not see the Devi as different from Krishna. In fact, he went even further. He said, I practice Islam, I see nothing but the same goal at the end. I practice Christianity, I see nothing but the same end goal. Correct?
Yes.
So in fact, he expanded the notion of other deities by his very life. Right? You see what I'm saying? So those are stand-ins. Undoubtedly, when one starts on the path, those initial characteristics may seem one way or the other, right? But the resounding and deafening message of all the gurus is that there is no difference in that end goal. Correct? Right? So you may take, let us take Jagat Guru Sri Adi Shankaracharya himself. Initially, we may be attracted because of his intellectual prowess. Nobody has written so beautifully about Vedanta, right? But if you look at his compositions on bhakti, they are no less, right? So how could the two be, in the same person, so to speak? There will be some initial characteristics, the tendencies one can discern, but in the end, same thing with Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna. If you truly read his sayings, they are the highest Vedanta, right? And so, yeah, does that make sense? Yeah. So, resort to other deities. They adopt other disciplines, being constrained by their inborn nature. Here, he's talking about those who may discriminate or differentiate between the deities. So, to these desire-ridden people, tesham cha kaminam, yo yam yam tanum bhaktaha. Oh, sorry, somebody has to read. We are on to the new verse. Please.
यो यो याम याम तनुम भक्तः श्रद्धया यार्चितुमिच्छति तस्य तस्य चलाम श्रद्धाम तामेव विदधाम्यहम्.
Very nice. Yes. Yo, which is yaha, he, yam, to which, tanum bhaktaha, shraddhaya. So, yo yaha iti, yaha kami, yam devata tanum. So, shraddhaya samyuktaha bhaktaha cha san. So, yo yam tanum bhaktaha, whatever form of the divine, shraddhaya architu machati, with devotion seeks to worship. Ichhati, seeks to. Tasya, his, achalam shraddham, unswerving devotion, tameva vidadamyaham, that I only give. That very devotion, I am the one who gives. Right? So, translation is, I give unswerving faith to each devotee who seeks to worship with faith whatever divine form of his choice. In other words, the supreme position of Bhagavan is that he is aware that he is the one manifesting in all these forms, right? And more importantly, he is the one who actually gives that Shraddha itself. So one may say that and you see, Shraddha as defined, definition in Tattva Bodha, Atma Bodha, is Guru Vedanta Vakyadishu Vishwasaha, correct? Trust in the words of the Guru and the Vedanta. So that very property itself is given by our inner self. So when we are filled with Shraddha, it means we are getting a call from the inner self. You can say Bhagavan is on the telephone when you feel that devotion, right? When your heart melts with that devotion, At that time, Lord is calling you. So one should heed, because he is the one who put the Shraddha there. It is his gift. Does that make sense? This is a new kind of way of thinking of it. I don't think we normally think of it this way, which is the beauty of Bhagavad Gita, is that it always somehow gives a new insight. Correct? Right? So the moment we feel that, when you see something that inspires your devotion, right, that very tug, or when you read something in the Upanishads and you feel, this is so divine, this is so beautiful, or I must, or even the intention to listen to something starts, that is the Lord himself, inner Antaryami calling. Acha, that's fairly clear?
Dr. Shankar, I have a question on this.
Yes, yes.
So please, when it is mentioned whatever divine form of its choice, so that means is this coming like Ishta? So somebody chooses one god, worshipping and then meditating. So that comes with Ishta, or that comes with a Guru Shishya Parampara, or families, lineage. Like some has how that works.
Absolutely, yes, yes, indeed.
So it depend. It can depend on the tendency of the person, right? Can choose.
Absolutely, right. I mean, you see, what is beautiful about this is, in fact, all the faith of the Christians and the Muslims is included in this.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I mean, in the end, that path also lead to that which Sri Ramakrishna himself showed. Right.
That's right. And that is the great power of Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna.
Mm-hmm.
In his time, he came and showed this truth by his own life example. So that is the most remarkable feature of his message, right? That through his very life, he showed that.
Right.
And
unifying.
that is,
Sorry. Unifying
Please,
all the religion.
What is that?
Not encouraging people to fight, because all the individual path will lead over there same
Right.
ultimate point, right?
Right. Indeed. And that also gives this very unique position to our Hinduism and Sanatana Dharma in its proper sense, that only that is capable of saying this, right? It never puts anyone in the us versus them category, right? In the ultimate sense, right? In the ultimate sense, it is able to stand like mother of all, above everything, and say, yes, you may also think you're worshipping somebody different, but you all come to me only, right? So, so very divine verse. Anything else should we carry forward, or? Acha, 22, please.
I can go.
Please.
Sataya Shraddhaya Yukta Tasyaradhanamihate Labhate cha tatah kaman Nyaiva Vihita Hitan.
Sataya Shraddhaya Yuktaha Tasya Aradhanam Ihate, right? Labhate cha tatakaman mayaiva vihitan hitan. So, Sataya Shraddhaya, what is the very instrument, that instrument possessed of that faith? He desires, Yuktaha, integrated, Tasya Aradhanam Ihate. He begins the worship. Right? He desires the worship of that form. So, the root of the desire to worship is faith, Shraddha. Labhate chatataka. From that divinity, he secures the objects of his desire. So even the arti, artharthi, jnanarthi, right? So arti desires relief from distress. whatever distress, physical distress or mental distress, right? Now, for instance, if we are in great physical pain, we may worship Dhanvantari, right? Dhanvantari is form of Vishnu, correct? During the Samudra Manthan, Dhanvantari emerged, correct? From the Manthan. And if you go to any Aushadhalaya or Ayurveda treatment place, you will see a giant statue of Dhanvantari in front, right? So Dhanvantari is a form of the divinity which is guaranteed to give you relief from physical ailments, correct? So if somebody Arti, distressed, worships, then that Bhagavan in his thing of Phaladata gives that relief according to that person's desires. Sometimes Dhanvantari comes in the form of your doctor in the hospital and gives you antibiotics. That's also a form of Dhanvantari only. The time scale and the efficacy and the side effects are proportional to your desires also, right? You see, Ayurveda is a very wonderful science, very ancient science. But in order to properly practice it, you should have started at age 10, right? Because Ayurveda believes that disease is the sixth stage, final manifestation of disequilibrium of the doshas. A very advanced stage. You are supposed to capture it at the first or second stage, right? There are 6 stages of disease formation. What we finally call disease in Western thing, oh, I am diseased, is very advanced stage in Ayurveda. Ayurveda, you're supposed to have fixed it through your lifestyle choices in the first or 2 stage, first, second stage itself, right? So now what happens if you go at the 6th stage and ask an Ayurvedic doctor, please, you say, well, you've done a lot of damage so far. You may not say that, I will give you some, but it's not going to have immediate effect, correct? All right. In that case, it may be better to go and get the rapid treatment from, because your situation is more desperate, correct? So there's nothing wrong with that. So these things also one has to use the judgment, correct? Ayurveda is very effective if one knows to catch the disease at an early stage and adjust it, the dosha balance, imbalance, as it were, before it has samprapti. The samprapti is the procedure of how disease progresses in Ayurveda. So anyway, so Dhanvantari worship will be useful at the good stage and early stage. Next case, Arti may be mentally distressed, may be suffering dukkha, daurmanasya. Then again, there are recommendations in our tradition. And then, of course, Artharthi. So, very typical, at least nowadays, on the Diwali day, there is Lakshmi Puja is done, right? Particularly in the business community, it is very popular, and rightly so, right? Because there is a desire to have material wealth, which is not wrong. Material wealth has its place, it has its purpose. What it's to what it is used and how it is used is more important. But nevertheless, Lakshmi Devi's blessings, when they appear, will give the fruit. Then Jnanarthi. Now, Jnanarthi may worship Saraswati Devi first to begin with, right? And then proceed. And definitely, that whatever the kind of Jnana that is required, if it is Paravidya or is it Aparavidya, depending, right? Whatever the desire, according to that, Bhagavan will give the fruit, right? If one applies oneself very diligently and meditates on secular matters pertaining to the physical world or other things, that knowledge also, the fruit of it we do gain, right? So this is the import here. But the point here again is Maya Eva. The definition of the Lord is the one who is the Phaladata. He is the one who, in his Saguna form, is conceived as the one who gives the fruits of the action appropriately, disburses them. If no questions, there's a little bit of commentary here that may be Possessed of the faith accorded by me, he attempts to worship that divinity. Thence, from the divinity worshipped, he wins the desired objects, fashioned by me, the omniscient Lord, who knows the classes of the fruits of karma. As the fruits of karma have been ordained by me, the devotee will assuredly gain them. If the word is taken as hitan, meaning favorable, the favorableness of fruits has to be taken as merely figurative, for objects of karma do no good to anyone. Hitan iti padachede hitatvam kamanam upacharitam kalpyam nahi kamaha hitaha kasyachit. So here Bhagavan Shankaracharya is interceding to point out that those fruits are of limited value. Right? They merely serve to as a means of purifying the mind to prepare it for the ultimate desire for Brahmagyan, right? Which transcends those other desires. Since yasmat antavat sadhana vyaparaha avivekinaha kaminaha cha te ataha. Since desire bound and undiscriminating individuals operate with finite means, their operations must come to an end. And that brings us to the next verse.
I can go.
Please.
Antavattu phalam tesham tadbhavatyalpamedhasam devan devayajo yanti madbhakta yanti mamapi.
This is a very beautiful verse. Thank you. Antavattu phalam tesham. Antavat means having the property of an end. Right? Finite. So the fruits are finite. Tad bhavati alpamedasam. Those of small mind, alpamedha, small-minded men, the fruits are finite, and that accrues to them, and it must come to an end. Antavattu phalam tesham tad bhavati alpamedasam. Devan devayajaha yanti. Those who worship the gods go to the gods. Mad bhakta yanti mamapi. But my devotees come directly to me. Okay? So the worshippers of God proceed to the gods. My devotees come to me. Though the exertion involved is similar in the two cases, they do not reach me and gain an inexhaustible fruit. What a pity. The Lord thus evinces pity for the worshippers of God. Now, this is very good point. But again, see, Bhagavan Shankaracharya is writing at a time, in a different time and place. He is talking about a time which is difficult for us to imagine, where everybody was engaged in the Vedic rituals. Right? And the Karma Kanda of the Ved has as its end basically Swarga. Right? That itself is a high goal, actually. Most of the activities that are undertaken today don't have any hope of even reaching that. If that was attained, that would be a superior achievement in our time. Right? Now, if one reads the Karma Kand, typically it talks about the nature of the senses. So the prayers are to Agni, many prayers. Agni is the one who carries the havis, all the oblations, to the gods. Right? So this is has to be understood through meditation, that indeed, yes, Agni in the Manipuraka is the one who carries everything up to the senses. Right? When we offer the sense objects into Agni, he takes them to the senses. And the devas, they are the illuminators of the senses. Right? Illuminators of the five senses are the devas. So that gives us sense experience. A Vedic yajna is a symbolic ritual explanation of how we right. Now the king of all the devas is Indra, who is the mind. right? This Indra is not just ordinary mind though. Indra is also called Vritraha. He has killed the serpent Vritra, right? And therefore he has gained Devalok. Now our own minds can reach the state of Indra, provided we do the Jnana Yajna. In other words, when we understand and restrain our senses, then we understand what is the Vedic Yajna doing. And indeed, then one reaches the delight, one attains the delight of Swargalok, right? But unfortunately, that Bhur Bhuva Swa, the Swa, if it is taken to mean the lowest Swargalok, that status is not permanent. In other words, when Shakti rises through the chakras, if it stops at the Manipuraka, its status is not, its goal is not fully achieved. It will fall again down, right? And that cycling will happen. It is only when it, now at that Manipuraka chakra, there's a very important Granthi called Vishnu Granthi. That Vishnu Granthi must be pierced, right? It is the absence of piercing the Vishnu Granthi that makes the so-called Vaishnavas so happy with the world. You see, normally, if you look at somebody who says that I'm Shaiva inclined, these people will be more austere. They will be more inward turning. They will be more, introverted. If you take typical Vaishnava, generally more loving pomp and luxury and opulence, more outward turning. Nothing wrong. Both with true Gyan can exist. One can have a Vaishnava who is truly a Vaishnava, right? But the ability to see through that comes only when you break the Vishnu Granthi. Until the Vishnu Granthi is not broken, the Mohini aspect of Vishnu still deludes the sadhak. The world still deludes the aspirant, right? When that Vishnu Granthi is broken, then the world ceases to delude the aspirant, right? And now, at that stage, many siddhis even offered, powers of the senses. The yogi is advised at that point to not be tempted by them, right? But to go beyond, because this is not the end. Ramakrishna says that there was a woodcutter, and first he said, go that way, you will find sandalwood, woods of sandal. Then you dig, you will find a silver mine, a copper mine, silver mine, keep digging, gold mine, keep digging, etc. So the idea is not to stop. There will be many treasures seen on the way, but going beyond that Svargalok, only then is the state that Bhagavan here is talking about, Mad Bhaktaha, the ones who are able to come to me. They cross beyond Svargalok into the state of the Siddhas. So crossing through Mahajana Tapa, reaching the Satyalok, right? Only there do they see the truth. And that is the inexhaustible bliss. Because the bliss of Svarga, although very wonderful and although the intent of the Karmakand serves to purify the mind, prepare it for this final journey beyond it. Acha. Then number 25, he's still, yeah, maybe we can read at 25 and then we can stop there. And then.
Yeah. So we haven't done 24, Professor.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yes. Then let us stop at 24. Very good. Yes.
Okay. Avyaktam vyaktimapannam manyante mama buddhayah param bhavam ajananto mamavyaya manuttamam.
Beautiful, beautiful. Avyaktam vyaktim apannam. So avyakta is the unmanifest. So this is the, we may say, the causal state. So remember when in Vedantic theory, we talk about prajna, that prajna state, and then Taijasa and Vaishvanara, right? Vishwa state. So Vishwa is fully manifested, right? Taijasa is the subtle, and prajna is the unmanifested state. So in meditation, we may say loosely, using English words, waking state, subconscious, and unconscious state. Right? The location of our consciousness, Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti, in the heart. So in the procedure of Yoga Nidra, the nature of consciousness in the prajna state is accessed. It's a form of meditation whereby the deepest causal karana shariram is accessed, going beyond even the sukshma, sthula sukshma karana. So Bhagavan is saying, even though I am that avyakta, vyaktim apannam manyate, they see me as the differentiated, manifested saguna form in the Jagrata Avastha. That's why they see these as different gods, right? Who mam abuddhaya, the ones who are witless, undiscriminating, right? Because their intelligence is not able to rest in the sattvic buddhi and see the truth from that point. Param bhavam ajanantaha, they do not know my the param bhavam, which is the that which is beyond, you may say. Ajananta, they do not know. Mama, avyayam and anuttamam, unchanging, and the one without without a superior, you may say, right? So immutable and unsurpassed is how the translation is given. Unchanging and without a superior, immutable, unsurpassed, same idea. The unmanifest or unrevealed now become manifest or revealed. So they deem me, the ever-present Lord, those who do not discriminate. They are ignorant of me, my supreme aspect, as the higher self, which is unchanging and unsurpassed. Not knowing this aspect of mine, they deem me now to be manifest. This is the idea. So the cause, Bhagavan is explaining, why is it that people are seeking various kinds of gods, deities, to satisfy different cravings. Of course, again, this is even, I would say, a slightly evolved type of human being who resorts to the Lord for their cravings. But what Bhagavan is saying here is that even that is a limitation. Right? So any questions on what we discussed so far? We discussed quite a bit. Hopefully interesting.
Dr. Shankar, I'm just thinking that the Devtas, they are so merciful that if somebody prays with, full devotion, and Bhagavan Shri Krishna is saying that Devtaon ko prapt hote hain. So the Devtas are so merciful and so available for true devotees that they don't, they are kind of accessible if somebody approaches with true devotion.
Yeah, indeed. Right. And that is the faith-giving nature of this chapter and Bhagavan's words, right? Indeed. And I can, definitely from our personal experience, I think we can all find some point where we can say that, right?
I have a question.
Yes.
You said that all the Vedic karma can't culminate on Indra. who symbolizes control over the mind.
Mhm.
And in almost all of these spiritual scriptures that we generally read, they always state that the first step in our sadhana, which is by no means the easier one, is to control the mind.
Mhm.
So is that the whole point of Vedic Karma Kand, to be done with that first step?
Right. So exactly, that's a very good point, Shalabh. Yes. So when we say devata there, of course we mean lords of the senses, right? So those lords, um, the ruler of those lords is indeed Indra, right? So it's a symbolic way of saying that there are these sense perceptions we have, and the mind controls them ultimately, right? And the beauty of our Vedic Karma Kand is it is saying that if we engage the mind in those pursuits, right, they rapidly purify the mind, right? And they make it very ready for then the next step. Right? In fact, in the traditional Ved Patshalas, in the true ones, the Samhita has to be taught, which is the text itself. Then, of course, there is Pada part, Krama part. There are various kinds of part, splitting, so as to ensure the transmission. You may think of it as um, in electrical engineering, there's you have these error bits you send along in packets to make sure that when you reconstruct packet at the other end, it's not lost in transmission. This breaking it up in pada part, krama part is exactly that. So that through oral transmission, we don't lose the sanctity of the message. But the message itself has, as I said, and that's another video that you can expect, anticipate at some point, is what is the power of Vedic chanting. Vedic chanting is so powerful. It directly affects the Sukshma Sharir. Even if you don't understand the meaning, the very vibration, the pulsation and the swaras and the duration has a direct effect on the human being, even without understanding. Then think if you understand also, which then goes to the mental level. If you understand the meaning also and you do it, very rapidly it will purify the mind. It has a naturally, right from the beginning, it is talking about, how does Agni go? Agni can be Jataveda, Kravyadam Agni, he can descend, invoke the one who goes up, right? There are prayers to Rakshas to destroy the Rakshasas, right? Who come and defile the sacrifice. It's just that our mind going in other ways, right? Those are the Rakshasas, the ones who take the mind away in direction which is not beneficial, not dharmic, right? And they're there, definitely everywhere. So just listening to the Vedic mantras, and then of course if one practices also, and if one does it with understanding, that rapidly purifies the mind to the stage where immediately, so that it's not a very long procedure. In fact, it was part of our instruction. So in the 16 years of instruction, or how many, 12 years, 12 to 16 years is the normal duration. When one emerged from the Vedic Pathshala, one would know the mind would be purified to that extent where this would be a fruit of that. Right? Any other questions? I hope that you will, we will post up these things as soon as we can, and then I think it will all hopefully come together in different ways. Right. So yeah, so we are coming now to this chapter has a lot of wonderful instructions from Bhagavan, and in the end there will be a very nice culmination where he will explain all these points, and the final culminating verse is very, very fantastic, 30. So something we can anticipate next time. And so Jnana Vijnana Adhyaya is very, Yoga Adhyaya is very, very beautiful. Sure. Any other comments, questions? Okay, well, thank you for your patience and for moving down an hour today. It was very nice. I'm glad we could continue. I really didn't want to miss these verses and meeting you. So next time we'll meet again at regular time. And I'll say Shanti Mantram and then I'll have a wonderful rest of the weekend and week ahead. Sure. Om Tachamyoravrunimahe Gatum Yajnaya Gatum Yajnapataye Daivihi Swastirastu Naham Swastirmanushebhyah Urdhvam Jigatu Bheshajam Shanno Astu Dvipadehe Sham Chatushpade Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste everyone.